Is there a case to be made that Brothers Karamazov is the greatest book ever written?
Yeah, there's a case to be made for that. I don't know. Is it better than Crime and Punishment?
Yes. Yeah.
You think so? Why do you? I'm not arguing with it. Why do you think that?
Well, every book is a person. Some of my best friends are inside that book.
Yeah, it's an amazing book. There's no doubt about it.
I think some books are defined by your personal relationship with them, and that one was definitive. And I almost graduated to that one because for the longest time, The Idiot was my favorite book of all. Because I identified with the ideas represented by Prince Mishkin. I also identified
that's interesting.
to Prince Mishkin as a human being.
The holy fool.
The fool, yeah, because the world kind of, my whole life still kind of saw me in my perception, in my narrow perception as kind of the fool. And different from the interpretation that a lot of people take of this book, I see him as a kind of hero, to be
definitely,
to be a naive, quote unquote fool, but really just a naive optimist, and naive in the best possible way. I do believe that
that's childlike.
Yeah, childlike is a better. So naive is usually seen as
that's childish, naive.
Yeah, but childlike.
That's why no one enters the kingdom of heaven unless they become like a child. That's Prince Mishkin. Dostoevsky knew that. So that's why he liked The Idiot. That's so interesting. See, I think I like Crime and Punishment because while you identified with Mishkin, I think I identified more with Raskolnikov because I was tempted by a Luciferian intellect, in the manner that, in a manner very similar to the manner he was tempted. But I mean, I think you can make a case that The Brothers Karamazov is Dostoevsky's crowning achievement.
Well,
and that's something, man. He ruined literature for me. Because everything else just felt insipid afterwards. Yeah. Not everything. I found some books that, in my experience, hit that pinnacle. The Master and Margarita. That's a deadly book. I've read that, I think, 4 times, and it's unbelievably deep. There's a Nikos Kazantzakis, a Greek writer. Mm-hmm. Some of his writing is amazing as well.
Did you ever connect with the literary, like existentialist Camus, or people like Hermann Hesse, or even Kafka? Yeah. Did you ever connect with those
to the same degree?
Yeah, to the same
enough to be an influence. You have to be deaf in some fundamental sense not to encounter a great dead friend and fail to learn. And I mean, I tried to separate the wheat from the chaff when I read. And I read all the great clinicians, all of them, perhaps not. Those who are foremost in the pantheon. And I tried to pull out what I could. And that was a lot. I learned a lot from Freud. I learned a lot from Rogers. And I learned a lot from Dostoevsky and Nietzsche. I'm going to do a course on Dostoevsky and Nietzsche for this Peterson Academy. This is coming up in January.
Oh, that'll be them
I'm
together.
Really looking forward to it.
You're weaving...
I hadn't thought about doing them together.
Oh.
That'd be fun. That's a good idea.
Well,
that'd be a good idea.
There's an interesting...
Steal that idea.
No. You often weave them together really masterfully because there is religious, in the broad sense of that word, themes throughout the writing of both.
Yeah, well, there's uncanny parallelisms in their writing and their lives. So, and Dostoevsky's deeper than Nietzsche, but that's because he was a writer of fiction.
Well, Nietzsche is almost a character in a Dostoevsky novel.
He is definitely that. He is definitely that, yes. And apparently Nietzsche knew more about Dostoevsky than people had thought. There's been some recent scholarship on that grounds. Dostoevsky didn't know anything about Nietzsche, as far as I know. I could be wrong about that. But the thing that Dostoevsky had over Nietzsche is Nietzsche had to make things propositional in some real sense because he was a philosopher. And it's hard to propositionalize things that are outside your ken, but you can characterize them. And so in The Brothers Karamazov, Ivan is a more developed character than Alyosha in the explicit sense. He can make better arguments. But Alyosha wins, like Mishkin, because he's the better man. And Dostoevsky can show that in the actions. He can't render it entirely propositional, but that's probably because what's good can't be rendered entirely propositional. And so Dostoevsky had that edge over Nietzsche. He said, well, Ivan is this brilliant rationalist, atheist, materialist, and puts forward an argument on that front that's still unparalleled as far as I'm concerned, and overwhelms Alyosha, who cannot respond, but Alyosha is still the better man. So, which is very interesting, that...
The funny thing about those two characters is you, Jordan Peterson, seem to be somebody that at least in part embodies both. Because you are one of the intellectuals of our time, rigorous in thought, but also are able to have that kind of, what would you describe? If you remove the religiosity of Alyosha, there's what's a good word? Love towards the world?
Spirit of encouragement.
Yes.
Which one? Yeah, well, it's one of the things I did learn, perhaps, from looking into the abyss to the degree that I have had to, or was willing to, was that at some level you have to make a fundamental statement of faith. When God creates the world, after each day, he says he saw that it was good. You think, well, is it good? It's like, well, there's a tough question. Do you want to bring a child into a world such as this? Which is a fundamental question of whether or not it's good. It's an act of faith to declare that it's good, because the evidence is ambivalent. Yeah. And so then you think, okay, well, am I going to act as if it's good? And what would happen if I did? And maybe the answer to that is, I think this is the answer. The more you act out the proposition that it's good, the better it gets. And so Dostoevsky said, this is something else. Every man is not only responsible for everything he does, but for everything everyone else does. It's like, what, is that profound, or are you just insane? Then you think, is what you receive back proportionate to what you deliver? And the answer to that might be yes. That's a terrifying idea, man. And it's certainly, you can see that it's true in some sense, because people certainly respond to you in kind with how you treat them. That's certainly the case.
I mean, it's terrifying and it's exciting.
Yeah, right. Well, that's an adventure, isn't it?
You, you create the world by the way you live it. The world you experience is defined by the way you live that world. And that's really interesting. And then taken as a collective, we create the world together in that way.